Good morning, Madam Vice Chair and County Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us to come over and chat with you about your DA's office and the work that we're doing on behalf of the citizens of the 4th Judicial District. As is typical, I've brought some folks over with me. One is to familiarize them with what this process looks like so that they can see the work that you all do as their county commissioners, but also too so that they can hear what I anticipate will be some kind words from you all about the hard work that they're doing to achieve justice for the citizens of this district, the 4th Judicial District. I also want to start out by thanking you all for your continued support during my tenure as district attorney here in the 4th Judicial. All 5 of you have been very staunch supporters of our public safety contingent here in the district, including our sheriff's office and your DA's office, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It takes all of us fighting and rowing in the same direction to achieve justice for our community, and you all play an important part in that. So as you all know, we are a constitutional and a statutory office, so we derive all of our powers and authorities through that Colorado Constitution and Colorado Revised Statutes. Our organizational chart is largely the same. As is typical in the past, I have 3 direct reports that come to me. Those are the Assistant District Attorney, Brent Nelson, our Director of Communications, Kate Singh, and then our Budget and Finance Director, Lauren Burris. And then the big difference is, it's probably hard to see, but in our county court, district court alignment, and we'll see some of these stats in just a moment, but the way that cases are coming in, our county court folks are actually, their caseloads are going up and our district court numbers are going down. So we've actually shifted 2 of our attorney positions into county court to augment those forces so that they can handle a growing caseload in misdemeanor land and in traffic. But it really takes everybody in the DA's office, and that's the downside to an organizational chart like this, which is a broad overview. It takes everybody in the office working hard day to day to make sure that we satisfy our mission. Everybody from Francine, Carolina, and Amanda in reception, through our intake and filing folks, which is a bigger team, but just to mention a couple, Brittany and Carla, and then our discovery team. Our discovery obligations continue to grow. A large part of that is because of body-worn camera. As we all know, statutory changes have required law enforcement officers that interact with the public to be equipped with body-worn camera. We have to then discover all of that footage out to defense so that defendants can have a fair shake at trial. And so our discovery team continues to grow, and that's actually one of my asks is to improve and add some folks to discovery. But we've got a big team, including Matt, Kyle, Emily, Nicole, and Aaron. Again, it takes all of them pushing hard to make sure that we can do the job that we do on behalf of the public. Our mission has stayed the same. Put simply, it's public safety and justice for our community. We all have learned over the last year that tragedy can strike our community at any given time. And when a big tragedy strikes, it's a surprise to everybody, and it has a wide-ranging impact on our community and our world. The good thing is, thanks to the support that you all have given us, is that your DA's office stands ready to respond with professional certainty. What that means is that we are equipped to take on and prosecute the biggest of cases. Essentially, the time is always right to do what is right, and your DA's office, thanks to your support, is able to do that on a day-to-day basis. As you know, we proudly serve all of El Paso and Teller counties. As I was sitting here listening to the other presenters this morning, I was noticing the El Paso County seal, which has a Pikes Peak on it and then the waves of grain bundled together. I like to say that the 4th Judicial District is literally Purple Mountain's majesty, 2 waving fields of grain. We have both sides of Pikes Peak, and it's a unique office. It's a unique office because it's the sole office responsible for an entire large metro and rural area. By comparison, in the state of Colorado, the Denver metro area, the other big population center in the state, is served by 4 separate DA's offices, whereas this area is served by 1 DA's office. And that adds an extra element of professionalism that we have. It changes the way that we operate within the larger community, and I think we're doing it better than any other DA's office in the state of Colorado. No surprise, again, you've seen these slides before, but we partner with local law enforcement, local and federal law enforcement, I should say. We are at the center of the criminal justice universe here in the 4th Judicial District. Because of that, we are the chief law enforcement office in the 4th Judicial District. Nothing happens in criminal court without your DA's office filing complaints, arguing motions, and seeking justice on behalf of victims. We work closely with 23 or more law enforcement agencies, and I'm privileged to work closely with 2 great sheriffs. Obviously, we just heard from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office under Sheriff Jeff Kramer, but specifically Sheriff Joe Roybal and Jason Mikesell up in Teller County are doing fantastic work in the 4th Judicial, and I'm privileged to work with both of them. Together, partnering with our law enforcement agencies, together we seek the truth so that we can punish the wicked. Our office has grown slowly over the years, but we currently sit at 250 total employees. We have 132 support staff, 26 sworn investigators, and 92 attorneys. It is unbeknownst to a lot of people in the community. You all have heard me say this, but we are the largest law firm in Southern Colorado. When you couple that many attorneys in one building working hard on behalf of the citizens, it is a big office and all focused on fighting for victims. You've seen our court responsibilities before, so I'm not going to belabor the points on all of these, but these sort of lay out where our work is being done. Most importantly, in this slide is, I like to point out our problem-solving courts. We have DUI court, DV court, our Veterans Trauma Court, and our Recovery Court. The favorite for me is our Veterans Trauma Court, partly because of my veteran status, but also because this community has a very large population of veterans, both actively serving and retired. And this is a way for us to uniquely address the challenges that veterans face after serving in war and being receiving some sort of a disability connected to their service, and then that disability causes them to commit some law violation. And this helps them get back on their feet and be productive members of society. Each one of those veterans, by the way, raised their right hand and swore to pay the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of all of us. And this is a small way in which we can serve that community. Through our primary responsibilities, we have county court, which is really our entry-level prosecution assignment. And it's where we bring new attorneys, even if they have experience, into the DA's office to learn about the culture and the way that we do things here. It's primarily misdemeanors. There's some traffic in there. We also have an appellate unit that handles all appeals and unique research needs. And then district court is where the majority of our cases that hit the front page of the newspaper are happening. That's our felony caseload. It includes our special victims unit, which is our sex-related cases, our organized crime unit. If you remember back to last year, we changed that unit from our economic crime unit to our organized crime unit. That was really an effort to be more flexible, to deal with the things that are popping up in our community. And really, they are at the tip of the spear in the fight against fentanyl. I met with one of our attorneys just yesterday on 3 different fentanyl-related death cases to come up with an attack plan on those types of cases. And they are literally, like I said, at the tip of the spear, working every day against that dangerous poison that's infiltrating our community. Our felony intake, I mentioned earlier, is working hard to bring in those cases, get the right charges filed, and put us on the right foot going forward. Secondary assignments are our homicide on-call team and our vehicular homicide assault on-call team. These folks are literally on-call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They respond out to the scenes of murders, vehicular homicides, right alongside first responders, and are embedded with those investigations throughout the entirety of that investigation, and then are tasked with prosecuting that case if there's criminal charges that stem from those investigations. You can imagine the things that they see, the things that they smell, the things that they will never forget as a result of those assignments. We also have our animal cruelty unit that continues to do good work. And then we have a law enforcement agency liaison. So every law enforcement agency in the 4th Judicial District has a liaison assigned to them so that we can have good communication between our respective agencies. Our community engagement is comprised of our UCCS law enforcement intern program, our recruiting/law school intern program. I'll note that our law school intern program has been instrumental in getting our attorney staffing levels to where they need to be. This is something that is still an outgrowth of the COVID pandemic, that the number of attorneys graduating from law schools has actually gone down. Those folks that are interested in getting into public service is less than it used to be. And so every DA's office across the country is actually experiencing difficulty in hiring attorneys, finding people that want to serve in this particular unique way. And so our recruiting of interns and then creating sort of a farm team through that, pipelines essentially, to our attorney ranks has been instrumental. And other DA's offices in the state of Colorado are now trying to mirror what we're doing to augment their staffing levels as well. I'll give you an example. Pueblo still is at 40% staffing of their levels. So that just gives you a very stark indication of the difficulties that DA's offices are having. We have not had that same level of difficulty. We also have our Kids Against Crime program and then our volunteer program, which in 2022, we had 96 volunteers that volunteered a total of 13,697 hours. The number up there I think is wrong, but that's outdated. That's a small picture of some of our volunteers. The older gentleman sort of third to the from the left there, Al Patton, has been, he's got a long history. He's from back east, so he's got a thick back east accent. Lots of fun stories to tell, and is so dedicated to helping out in the volunteer realm. So this is our 2022 diversion snapshot. Reason why I like to point this out is that this really talks about second chances in addition to our specialty courts. Not every case we handle requires the hammer, and that's what these cases represent. So our human trafficking diversion program, we had 2 cases last year with a 100% success rate, meaning that everybody that came through there successfully passed it. Our sexting diversion, 6 cases accepted with 100% success. For those that don't understand what sexting is, that's really dealing with juveniles who don't understand the implications of social media and the power that they have in their phones and what taking nude photos might do to them long term. There's actually a law that deals with sexting, and that's what this is all about, is getting those juveniles into this program and then educating them about the dangers of this sort of thing and giving them the tools to avoid that peer pressure in the future. We also have the juvenile diversion program, which is really big, 248 cases accepted with an 81% success rate. Minor in possession, that's 70 cases accepted with 81% success. Adult diversion, 42 cases accepted with 69% success. And then you've all heard of neighborhood justice, which is really mediation. So that's where you bring the 2 parties together at a table with a mediator and you talk about whatever happened and you hopefully resolve those issues so that can be avoided in the future. 255 total cases accepted with a 68% success rate. So in total, 623 total cases were accepted into our diversion programs with varying levels of success, but all of them above 68% success. I didn't cycle through each one of the bullet points, but there they are now. And then we continue to fight hard for victims. We lead the state in the number of dollars achieved in restitution ordered for victims. This year, well, in 2022, $6,728,313 in restitution ordered, which is up from $5,469,000 just last year. In victim compensation, we awarded $1,274,000 and $63.47 in victim comp. That's up from $1,162,000 last year. And then in the last year, 26,302 total cases prosecuted. That number also leads the state of Colorado. So we are doing more work on behalf of the citizens of the 4th Judicial District than any other DA's office in the state. We refuse to compromise in the 4th Judicial District. Between 2018 and 2022, population growth in this area, as you all know, you grapple with the issues dealing with infrastructure more than any other group in this area. You know that the population has outpaced the growth in the rest of the state. Our violent crime rate across the state has increased 23% over the last 5 years. Homicides for the state of Colorado increased by 75%. That number should be eye-popping to most people. Here in the 4th Judicial District, it has increased, but not to the same level as the rest of the state, 47.7%. Aggravated assault in the state, 43.7% increase. 4th JD, 28.9%. What we're seeing across the board in cases is that the solve rates are actually going down, meaning that police departments are having trouble to a different degree in clearing cases or solving cases. That's not their fault. That is the fault of the legislature that has continually had a war on policing over the last roughly 5 years from 2017 through today. And so their solve rates have actually decreased, meaning that less cases are actually coming into DA's offices. When we get to the slide in comparison to our office and some other offices in the state, you'll see the numbers of filings have actually gone down for almost every single one of those DA's offices. We're not unique in that way. Interestingly, property crime has a 17% increase over 5 years statewide. Motor vehicle theft, you all know we lead the entire country in the rate of motor vehicle theft. It's increased by 107% over the last 5 years for the state of Colorado. That number for the 4th Judicial District should surprise you. Only 11% increase here in the 4th Judicial District. That's because of the hard work of our law enforcement and the hard work of these folks in the DA's office on behalf of our citizens. And that's a point of extreme pride for me. Burglary, increase of 4.5% statewide. It's actually decreased here in the 4th Judicial District, down 3.3%. And when, just to point out again, that we refuse to compromise. We are facing continual criminal justice reform in the state of Colorado, yet our numbers are better than the state of Colorado. It's because of our law enforcement commitment to our community, and then us working closely with our law enforcement partners to make sure that we hold the line on public safety, refusing to compromise in the face of extreme hardship. Here are those benchmark comparisons. The top box is a focus on the 4th JD over a 3-year time span. So if you look at total cases filed 2020 to 2022, you can see that those numbers have declined for 3 straight years. That means less cases are coming in, so less cases are being filed, and I expect to see that trend continuing going forward because of the difficulties that I just mentioned with law enforcement staffing levels. The lower box is a comparison to the other districts in the state. You can see that we lead in all of those categories continuously. For a point of comparison, the 2nd Judicial District is Denver City and County. The 18th Judicial District is our neighborhood just to the north. That district is going to be splitting in 2025, so that'll turn into the 18th and the 23rd Judicial District. But they are our closest competitor and closest comparison point, and yet we are far exceeding what they do up there. 1st Judicial District is Jefferson and Gilpin counties, and then 8th Judicial District is Larimer County up in Fort Collins, basically. I would point out as well that our budget is, when you compare it to the Denver metro area, our budget is between $10 and $15 million less than their budgets. I don't say that as a point of saying that we should get more necessarily. I say that as a point to say that our office is doing more with less. We're being more fiscally responsible than those offices are. We're filing more cases despite those financial differences, and we are achieving more justice on behalf of victims than those other offices. We are a trial-focused office. You have all heard me say this in the past. Between 90 and 95% of all cases filed in criminal court across the United States result in a plea agreement. This is really a plea-driven system, the criminal justice system in the United States. That said, we lead the state in the number of trials. We are not afraid to take a case with the given facts from an investigation and engage with the community in determining whether somebody is guilty or not guilty of a given crime. That is unique. Not all offices are so well equipped and willing to take cases to trial and engage with the community members to determine if somebody is guilty or not. You can see 2022 was the high point at 388 cases. I can tell you that I think it was just last week, we surpassed that number already this year. I expect that this year in 2023, we will exceed 400 jury trials for the first time ever. And that by far leads the state for a judicial district in the terms of cases we are taking to trial. As I mentioned already this year, we've broke last year's record number of trials, and we are projected to get over 400. We welcome the prospect of jury trial. We welcome the prospect of sending our folks into trial and engaging with the community and relying on our law enforcement partners to be witnesses for us. And like I said, it's a unique way to engage with the community. We've had a renewed focus on prolific offenders. We have specialized collaboration between our office, CSPD, El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Fountain Police Department, through essentially monthly meetings to determine what resources we need to use to go after specific types of crime, where we're doing well, where we're not doing well collectively and collaboratively. And that's really identifying trends and then coming up with ways to really have an impact on those trends in a positive way. The next sections are going to be our cases of note, which there's nothing that's going to scare any of you like last year's. We don't have any audio with any of these case presentations, but they really highlight the high-level work that we're doing in the DA's office. The first is justice for Gannon Stauch. You've all heard me talk about this case probably many times, but it was the largest investigation in 4th JD history. The primary investigative office was actually the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, but it included agencies, over 20 agencies across the United States that helped us find the truth and punish this wicked actor in this case. People were involved with this case from Florida, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Colorado, Kansas, and the Sheriff's Office bared the brunt of the majority of that, especially as that particular defendant sat in the jail for 3 years and caused all kinds of mayhem in the jail. That investigation and prosecution spanned more than 3 years. There was a 13-member trial team. I'd ask that trial team to stand up if you would. Don't be shy. This is just some of those folks that worked tirelessly on this case from the very beginning. And this case, as you all know, gained both national and international media coverage. You can sit down. National and international media coverage and responsibilities. Through the hard work of that trial team, that defendant, who we don't say the name of anymore, but we call her by her inmate number, was found by jury verdict guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, and she has subsequently been transferred to Topeka Correctional Facility in Topeka, Kansas. The reason for that is that some high-profile inmates in Colorado DOC, to protect both that inmate and the other inmates, they ship them to other states, and that's really what that's all about. I would prefer that she be held in the state of Colorado where she committed her crime, but that's not how the system works, unfortunately. Secondly, I mentioned this obliquely earlier, but the Club Q case, tragedy striking our community and having both wide impact on our community, but also wide impact on the rest of the world, really. It was the deadliest hate crime in 4th JD history. We had an immediate high-level response. Myself, the assistant DA was out. We had investigators out. We had victim advocates out from the very beginning. Our state and federal partners were out on this case from the very start. We served over 50 victims and their families. It was a very collaborative investigation and prosecution. This case also garnered both national and international media coverage and responsibilities, and was, especially at the very beginning, a very difficult task to tackle. It required all investigative agencies to work closely to make sure that we didn't say anything publicly at that early stage that would impact our ability to then prosecute and seek justice for those victims. I cannot pass this slide up without pointing out the victims in this case: Daniel Aston, Raymond Green Vance, Ashley Paw, Derek Rump, and Kelly Loving. This case is also about some heroes, most specifically Thomas James, who is currently serving the United States Navy. He engaged with this shooter. At some point, I'm sure that you all might see the video, but when you do, you'll be shocked by the bravery of Tom James. He was out on the smoke deck of that establishment, heard the gunshots, and then responded to those gunshots in the face of great peril to himself. He was shot in the abdomen in the process. He burned his hands on the barrel of the rifle of the shooter and engaged with him in a struggle that prevented more people from being killed. He was recently honored by the United States Navy and was given a unique award. I'd ask the trial team for a Club Q to please stand up. Thank you, folks. Through the impeccable investigation, no stone was left unturned. We protected against common tactics such as discovery violations that you see in big cases like this, and mental health defenses. You see, if you watch the news, what's going on up in Boulder with the King Soopers shooting. They've been fighting over competency and sanity. Because of the strong investigation in this case, we were able to avoid largely all of those pitfalls. The plea result was max sentence. And what I mean by max sentence is that we achieved the exact same sentence through a plea agreement that we would have achieved if we had gone to trial. We did that without having the impact of what trial looks like, re-victimization of victims, huge financial expense. With a team like that, many attorneys assigned to the case, that would have had a huge financial impact on the citizens of this community. And there's also the uncertainty of trial. Every time we go to trial, we accept the risk that a juror may not agree with the evidence and what we're asking them to do. In criminal court, we have to have unanimous verdicts so that all 12 jurors have to agree that somebody is either guilty or not guilty. If one person decides that that person is not guilty, then we've really expended a huge expense and have to do it again, or potentially walk away with nothing. And this plea agreement actually put aside all of those concerns. We achieved the longest sentence ever imposed in 4th Judicial District history. That was 5 consecutive life sentences plus 2,208 years, also running consecutively. That defendant, also not named, has been transferred to Wyoming State Penitentiary up in Rawlins, Wyoming. It's interesting to note that, at least for me, who pays attention to crime, that he was transferred to the state that also had a high-profile hate crime occur in its state, and that was the Matthew Shepard case, where a young man in Wyoming was gay and was attacked by 2 people at a bar, tied to a fence post and beaten until he was dead. So I think it's a poetic justice that he has been transferred to that state to serve out the rest of his life in a prison cell. Layla is a survivor of animal cruelty. This case represents what we see in many of our cases, an intersection between different types of crime. In this case specifically, DUI and animal cruelty in the same case. The defendant was in a drunken rage because he couldn't get his car to start. He had previously been convicted of DUI, so he had an interlock device attached to it, and he'd been drinking that particular day, so his car would not start. So what did he do to work out his frustration? He turned to beating on Layla. That beating was witnessed by onlookers who intervened on Layla's behalf, and that person was taken to trial and convicted. Interestingly enough, he failed to appear at sentencing, so he is actually actively out on warrant status as we stand here today. If I could have the folks that worked on Layla's case please stand up. Thank you, folks. This case is an extremely sad case, Aislinn Staten Contreras. She stands for the very real and dire impact that fentanyl has had on our community, our country, and the Pikes Peak region as a whole. Her mother was a persistent drug user who had turned to fentanyl, and Aislinn was able to get some of that fentanyl and ingest it. She died at a truck stop in Fountain, Colorado. We actually just finished prosecuting her mother for Aislinn's death, for child abuse resulting in death. That instance of her ingesting of the fentanyl actually preceded our change in the law, the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act. So we had to proceed under a child abuse resulting in death charge. Her mother was convicted. She is going to serve 27 years in DOC custody as a result of that child abuse resulting in death. Speaking of fentanyl, your 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office is leading the fight against fentanyl. We have filed 345 cases or charges in 2023, a 292% increase over 2022. Those numbers, I'm sure, lead the state of Colorado. We've had 133 counts of possession with intent to distribute in 118 cases. We have 5 active cases working currently involving fentanyl distribution resulting in death. And we've had 2 cases of child abuse resulting in death involving fentanyl. One was the one I just mentioned. Another was a mother-father combo who was dealing fentanyl, who were users of fentanyl, and their child ingested fentanyl and died. We took both of them to trial and convicted them. They're both serving long sentences. Coinciding with that, they were also dealing fentanyl. And they knew the dangers of fentanyl because when they would give fentanyl to young people, they would give them Narcan, saying this is dangerous stuff. If you overdose, make sure you have your Narcan with you. And so those are the types of cases that we're seeing in fentanyl here in the 4th Judicial District. And again, we are leading the state. We are using the Fentanyl Accountability and Prevention Act powers to a degree that is unmatched throughout the state. The Denver Post did an article a couple of months ago that highlighted that we have more cases that we've actually filed than any other district. I'll note that I don't think the Denver DA's offices have filed a single one of these cases yet. The only other office I think that's done some of these is up in Larimer County in Fort Collins.
Mr. Allen, you may have just alluded to this answer, but that 292% increase, is that parallel to an increase in the usage rate? Is it parallel to the increase of supply in the community? Or does it have to do with the way the judicial office is prosecuting these?
Yeah, it's all of the above, I would say. One, the entire state, you should know, is saturated with fentanyl. When the laws were loosened to the way that they were back in 2019, meaning that 4 grams or less of fentanyl was a misdemeanor, cartels are businesses too, and they realized that there was a very fertile market here, and so they saturated our state with fentanyl. The amounts of fentanyl that we're seizing through law enforcement efforts, interdiction efforts, is just the tip of the iceberg. There's lots more out there. So it's a reflection of how much is in the market. It's a reflection of the collaboration that we've had with our law enforcement partners here in the 4th Judicial District. So with the passage of the Fentanyl Prevention and Accountability Act, I personally met with our law enforcement leaders and made sure that we were equipped to investigate those cases and then prosecute those cases locally, so that we weren't required to go through the federal system anymore as much as we possibly could. So it's really a reflection of all of those things.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to make sure I heard something you said. By the way, thank you for everything that you're all doing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But did you say that some of the other districts haven't filed a single case?
That's my understanding.
That's incredible.
It is.
I mean, this is on a massive, deadly scale. That's really disheartening. I just can't believe that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we have the best right here in the 4th JD.
Yes. I'll tell you, one of the things that's been important to me, because I sit on the Colorado State Board of Health, is I have asked them to provide an update on fentanyl throughout the state of Colorado. They gave a presentation that made it sound like the entire state is fighting fentanyl. But your comment is really interesting to me. I'd like to maybe have a conversation with you about that later and like to bring that to the State Board of Health.
I would say that law enforcement largely, so the actual uniformed and undercover law enforcement officers throughout the state are working on this actively. It just not every area of the state has the same partnerships in place, the same collaboration, and the same willingness to go after this thing. So it's really systemic. So I think part of what you're hearing is probably true. It's just not being followed through with actual effort through prosecution.
Thank you.
We continue to increase our efforts on transparency. We now have a Analytics Thursday, which is weekly social media push. It's data-backed statistics that notify the community of current issues, trends, and areas of specific impact. We are still also running our highly accurate data dashboards and looking for areas to expand that effort. As we all know, good, reliable data requires good, reliable inputs, and we rely on more than just folks in my office for those inputs. The court system has to put good data in, and so we're working on ways to firm that up. And the reason why I say that is that we've got 4 public-facing data dashboards currently. We are looking to expand that at some point in the hopefully fairly near future to give us a better picture collectively into what's happening in the criminal justice system in the 4th Judicial District. So now we're at the budget and critical needs. I think it was Mr. Borman earlier who was talking about postage. Maybe it was Mr. Schleicher actually talking about mailing things out. We still rely in the DA's office on snail mail as well. So the postage costs have increased. We have to send out mail to point out to have good service on people through different things, good notification, that kind of thing. So those costs have gone up because of increases in postage. We're asking for 4 new discovery clerks. As I mentioned before, that's largely because of the demand, the increased demand of body-worn camera footage and all the expanding discovery requirements that we have. 2 restitution clerks to be even better in that area. We do better work in that area than any other DA's office in the state, but there's still gaps, and we want to close those gaps by adding 2 new folks to that team. And then we want to add an HR generalist position. As you all know, we are a growing and dynamic office, and an HR generalist position will allow us to continue to meet the needs of our employees while also maintaining compliance with the requirements placed on us by the state with changes in employment law. It seems like every legislative session there are new changes to the employment law. We work closely with county HR, county attorney's office, and then our folks in the DA's office to make sure that we're in compliance with those laws. So those are the requests that we have as far as going forward. And then the challenges ahead. We want to continue to engage with the community in the pursuit of justice. You've seen what that looks like. Crime is increasing as solve rates decline, so that will be an ongoing challenge, not just for the DA's office, but for law enforcement as a whole. And want to make sure that we have really strong relationships with our partners so that we can collectively attack that issue. That also means that we want to be strong voices in the realm of legislation, which I intend to be very heavily engaged in again this coming legislative session, like I usually am. And then we just had a good discussion about fentanyl and that growing impact. Synthetic opioids, which is what fentanyl is, are always changing. It won't be long before we have the next synthetic opioid in our area, and that will be a challenge for us, both legislatively and collaboratively with our law enforcement partners to tackle that next epidemic of poison really infiltrating our area. And then we will always fight for victims despite that criminal justice reform. We've had lots of reform, decriminalization efforts coming out of Denver over the years, and yet we will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with our victims to achieve justice for them in the court system. With that, any questions?
Are there any questions for DA Allen? Comments? Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a comment and then a question. So, great job. Like seeing all this. I mean, I don't like seeing the increased crime trends, but I think what we need to do and why we see that ours is less than statewide is prosecution and the desire to make sure that justice is served. And people should know that's what you and your office does. That's what this county does. And so I appreciate that greatly. The one question I have is in terms of restitution numbers, the dollars, does that relate to like a recovery of theft, stolen items, or fraud, or what goes into that math there?
Yeah, it can be every type of crime. Any case that a victim has a financial loss, it could be anything. It could be from theft. It could be theft of a motor vehicle. It could be murder victims. The family members might have restitution for funeral expenses or all kinds of different things. So it's really runs the entire gamut of our cases.
Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I especially wanted to thank you having your team here. I think one of the important things, I know I had a friend who, her friend was murdered in a southern town last week, and the response from their law enforcement community wasn't anywhere near as great as the partnerships that we are having with you and all of the law enforcement, with our coroner who is here, all working together to get these victims justice. My friend was really struggling with how her murdered friend would get justice in her community because the police had messed up the crime scene, and there were several things that were going on. And so it's so important for those who are the victims of violence and for the survivors of those victims to have such a strong DA's office. So I just want to thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm glad you pointed out that our coroner, Leon Kelly, is here. Dr. Kelly is also a vital partner for us. A lot of people don't necessarily know this, but he was instrumental in Gannon's Stout case as well. He did a lot of work on trying to identify Gannon's remains because they had decomposed to a level that was difficult for the folks in Florida to handle. And so he stepped into the gap and proved instrumental for us at trial.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'll just kind of go through a couple of things that I think are very notable. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the work you're doing with regard to fentanyl. To me, it just feels like a drug pandemic, what's going on with that, and the increases just keep on going, so we've got to keep working on it. So thank you for doing all of that. I also want to thank you and the team, and I'll specifically thank the jurors for their amazing work in these high-profile cases, record cases in 4th Judicial District. And those were high-profile, high-risk. There were chances of a different outcome. So I just want to say thank you for doing all that and getting justice for all the victims for those things. They were really, really important. And my thanks to and hats off to the juries that deliberated over those. I have to tell you, I just love the diversion courts. You know, what we're trying to do here, as we've always been trying to do, is get to rehabilitation. And in certain cases, it's logical to go to a diversion court instead of another pathway, because if we can get people rehabilitated and back into a productive member of society, and they may have to be on parole and do some other things, maybe do some hours of work in the community or something like that. But to get them into a place where they can realize that what they did was wrong and get themselves dedicated back into society, those are great things. I also appreciate your restitution work. That's really, really important. And then I thought the charts on lower crime rates, but also really higher numbers of prosecution cases. Let's be hopeful that the word is out on the street. If you're going to do a crime, don't do it here. I hope that's what that means. And I'm disheartened by the massive increases in crime in other parts of the state. And I would concur with you that by and large, a large percentage of that has been the state legislature that I do not think has been very thoughtful regarding the safety of our citizens in Colorado, that there was some kind of, thinking that there was evil intent on behalf of those that are involved in law enforcement. That is just absolutely ridiculous. These people, your people, the people from the sheriff's office, the people from the coroner's office, and all kinds of nonprofits that work in the community to work in this space, they are dedicated individuals, dedicated to providing public safety, and to somehow think that they need to be punished some way I can't even comprehend how anybody could think that. So I just want to thank you and the team for everything you're doing. I appreciate the critical needs. We'll certainly be deliberating all of those. They sound pretty reasonable to me. And I also want to thank the jurors and the whole team, and also the volunteers that you've got, because they help in so many different ways. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. And you hit on a point that I probably should have mentioned, and that is our jurors. When we're collaborating with our community, presenting cases to them, here's some interesting stats. Our community has a particular idea of what public safety wants it to look like in this area, right? And what goes hand in hand with that is their willingness to serve on juries. I think it's somewhere between 65, 68% of all jury summons are responded to here in the 4th Judicial District, which might sound low, but there are communities both in here in the state of Colorado and nationally where the response to jury summons is like 20 to 30%. So our folks in this community are willing to serve on juries. They're willing to come in and hear some really tough evidence, see some really horrible pictures, things that they didn't expect to hear or see when they responded. They're essentially plucked out of their lives and dropped into a courtroom, and then are participants in what's happening. And that can be tough on jurors as well. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I want to thank those 68% that did appear for duty. I just want you to know, in the 6.5 years I've been a county commissioner, I've been called to jury duty twice, and only had that happen once in my 28 years in the Air Force. So twice in 6.5 years. Although in both cases, defendant's attorney dismissed me before I got to court, probably because I vote on the district attorney's budget or something. But in any case, I was dismissed both. But the point, I think, that's very important is I showed. And that's a civic duty. So for the 68% that did show, thank you to them.
Yep.
Commissioner Geithner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As always, fantastic presentation and service to our community. It's great that we have all of these items that are related to public safety together this morning because it's very clear that this board does care a lot about public safety and is prioritizing that in the budget. But the work that you're presenting, honestly, the information is all very sobering. I want to recognize, because I think, you did a fantastic presentation, but a lot of this has also been talked about as the leader that you are in the state of Colorado. I've mentioned a couple of times that Common Sense Institute report that recognizes the value of you and your team and how that is making an impact. And that we are a safer community because of that, even though we are continuing to struggle. A couple of things. The one slide that you put up that said engaging the community in the pursuit of justice. I really appreciate this because as you talked about the amount of press conferences and things that you participate in, I've been very impressed with how you've handled that, how you've kept the public completely involved in those things as soon as you were able to. I think that the professionalism with which you have done that has really been important for our community. It would be easy to, say we have so many things to do and do it all behind closed doors, but I think it creates a level of understanding and compassion for the things for the victims, but it also helps people to really understand that you are working for them in their community and creates trust. So that has been incredibly impressive to me, and I really appreciate that you are focused on doing that and continue to do that. I want to thank you too for the work that this board has allowed me to participate in. So thanks to this board for allowing me to participate in that. And thank you for being a part of what we rolled out just a couple weeks ago, that Pikes Peak Promise to continue. And to me, is exactly what you're already doing. You are engaging the community in the pursuit of justice, and I'm honored to be a part of that and to continue that conversation and help our community truly see the tools that you need that you just don't have. You're doing the very best you can. We still have increases, but you're doing the very best you can with the tools that are being provided in the legal framework we have today. So just really excited to continue to work on that, to continue to talk to our community about that and be a part of what you are doing and be able to, kind of stand behind you and say, you're doing great things. State, help out our DA. He's doing everything that he can. And it's just, it's an honor to serve as a county elected official with you at this time. And in terms of the critical needs, I think, again, it's very clear that this board wants to prioritize public safety, that this is necessary for our community, and I am very supportive of making sure that we are able to do that moving forward.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I would just deflect anything that you're saying about me personally. I would deflect it to the folks that you see here in this room today, but really the 250 total employees at the DA's office. I'm just one piece of that puzzle, and it's because of the dedication that these folks have towards that pursuit of justice. And I also want to commend all 5 of you for what you just said too, that commitment to uphold public safety and support the public safety initiatives. Each one of you have individually and collectively supported us in the DA's office, the sheriff's office, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So thank you.
And just a few comments to wrap it up from me. My colleagues have said it very well. One thing that stood out to me was that chart of the record number of trials that you all have endured this year, and you touched on a couple of the high-profile ones, and the extreme high-profile nature of a few of those, it gave the opportunity to display a consummate professionalism in the face of some really difficult things, of some misunderstanding talking heads and everything else. But the professionalism with which you yourself and your staff treated everyone involved in those cases, and particularly with a focus on the victims, was just really impressive. It made me very proud of our 4th Judicial Office. And I wanted to point out, too, that we're coming up right on the anniversary in the next few days of the Club Q shooting. And while it took nearly 3 years to get justice for Gannon, it took less than a year to get justice for those victims at Club Q. And that's impressive. It shows the professionalism, again, really of the entire criminal justice system working together. You mentioned the coroner here, as well as our sheriff's office. CSPD was involved in a couple of those. So it's really impressive, the collaboration, especially when you add, what'd you say, up to 23 other agencies that you're working with at any given time, especially when you add other people in the mix, to still have such a solid, locked down ability to ultimately provide justice for those who deserve it. Thank you very much for your work. Thank every one of you who also sees and hears the tough things that jurors do every day as well. And we appreciate that. Please deliver that to the rest of your staff. And again, my colleagues have said it well, as in terms of budget, we are prioritizing public safety, and we'll see 3 different examples of how we can do that this morning. Thank you for presenting a great case.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you
So much. Yep.
I just have to make a quick comment that, as you said, thank you for presenting a great case. I guess we shouldn't be completely surprised that our district attorney was very adept at presenting a great case.
Pun intended.